Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara. Episode 43. Shri Mahaswami-The Sage with Eyes of Light. The Diary of a Seeker of Truth. Dr.Serge Demetrian. Dear devotees, now we shall listen to the second section, part 3 of this divine book under the subtitle Around the River Arani. Kottapetta, 9th November 1971. His foot was dangling over my head. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. Shri Mahaswami had just opened the tarpaulin and he was receiving the incensing of a few aged women. In the night, I had dreamed of him. He seemed full of goodwill and wanted to teach me the way the sannyasin tie their loincloth. My mind was agitated, the consequence of yesterday's experiences. With the patience of a real father, Swamiji started to cure me. Without leaving his rickshaw, he engaged himself in a long conversation with the yesterday's talkative woman, probably to keep me in front of him. Without showing any exterior sign, he made me move on the right side of the tricycle so that I could stand alone. At a certain moment, when no assistant was watching over me, I had his permission to observe him through a slit of the tarpaulin from very near, hardly a few tens of centimeters. Only then, after having purified me, he blessed me for a long period. Soon afterward, he pretended to come down off the rickshaw, but he stopped, hesitating, with a foot balanced in the air without touching the earth. He stood like this, in a playing mood, as if waiting for someone. I could understand what he wanted, and I prostrated in all my length, as near as possible, exactly under his foot that dangled over my head. I think of having done well. While coming down from the box of the tricycle, Shri Mahaswami smiled towards me with an approving look and with that so characteristic gesture of the head. You did well entrusting yourself to me. Do not fear. I will take care. Then, by pure formality, but also to joke, he asked one of his assistants while pointing his finger towards me, Australia? No, Romania, came the reply of one among the assistants, as if he did not know from where I came. The morning had been calm. The small village is quite likable. The temples are abandoned or 3/4 ruined, but some houses are electrified. A statue of Mahatma Gandhi of natural size, made out of white cement, was under a low covering painted in pastel tones and had a place of pride in the village's main square. At the limit of the two prisons is the Arani River, a small stream covering hardly 5% of the gigantic bed, but which never gets totally dry even in summer. On the northern side, a hill, like an inverted straw hat thrown in the middle of the open countryside. The old princely family from Karveti Nagar possessed here some land. Towards midday, Shri Mahaswami visited the temple of Kodandarama Swami as in Karveti Nagar. He entered along with 3 or 4 persons. When he came out, visitors and villagers hurried to prostrate in front of him. A group of visitors kept the Harijans of the locality at a distance. I observed that they acted so without Shri Mahaswami's permission. Soon afterwards, Swamiji headed towards a nearby hamlet on the other side of the river. I could not follow him due to a strong headache. Was it sunstroke or a fatigue of the nervous system, or was it a message from Shri Mahaswami? I am very attentive to these signs, which one has to interpret according to one's experience. This is the method of Shri Mahaswami, to talk without words. I discovered an idyllic place for the prayers at dawn, an abandoned Shivalinga in a clearing surrounded by tall trees on the banks of the river. How strange are human dealings! At less than 40 meters of this favored place, a group of villagers were boiling in metal vats an alcoholic brew. In the late evening, I was asking myself if I had to follow Sri Mahaswami into the hamlet where he had gone in the afternoon, or if I had to stay in the main village. I decided for the hamlet. I thought to myself, after all, if he does not want me there, he will find a means to let me know. As soon as I arrived, I saw him in a cowshed. I stood in front of him. At some 3 meters, the hands in Anjali, he permitted me to meditate. I retired behind a pillar to protect myself from the glare of too bright a lamp. He looked at me from time to time. Cottapetta, 10th November 1971. The Romanian Doctor. Sri Mahaswami started out this morning for the principal village in the area. He allowed me to follow him for some 3/4 of an hour up to a sort of farm at the outskirts of the locality where he entered another cowshed. As usual, he preferred the shelters of animals to the houses of men. After my toilet at the river, I came before him intending to ask permission to return to Kanchipuram. I tried to prostrate before him, but I was unable to move, although he seemed to wait for me. I understood that I had to postpone my departure, and I renounced the wish to depart with no regrets. Sri Mahaswami went to the river for his bath, and on his way back, he entered a small room that housed a water pump. After some time, he came out intending to receive a group of visitors and villagers. I approached and looked continuously at him. His eyes were light blue towards white. This time, I did not perceive the lightning. However, for me, his divinity is so evident that the need to declare it, to shout this truth, overwhelmed me. I felt an immense love for him, and in my mind, I could totally give my person to him as an offering. When the visitors had left, I would have liked to prostrate, yet I was unable to move. I had forgotten that I wanted to leave, and my eyes were full of tears. He asked by gesture, "Who is that one with the cloth on the head?" Indeed, I had tied a makeshift turban as a protection against the heat of the sun. "The Romanian doctor," someone replied. He blessed me with his open hand towards me, and with more and more brilliant scintillation of his very clear blue eyes. By gestures that would make me readily accept torture for his sake, he seemed to convey to me not to yield to fear and to rely on him. Round noon, as I stumbled between the plots of rice fields without knowing exactly in which direction, a peasant invited me for lunch. I accepted. The food was of good quality, not very hot, and especially soft boiled. I am an object of curiosity for everybody. Having come to know that I am a medical doctor, the villagers ask for a consultation for all sorts of ailments, both for people and cattle. I do what I can without being delighted by these activities. Like children, they comment upon my slightest gestures and explode at every word of mine in a rather elementary Telugu language. Cottapetta, 11th November 1971. Only the eyes of the goddess existed. I am near Cottapetta, in the house belonging to the judge of the village Munsif, a likable, strapping man, and I passed a cold night on a local bed made of woven ropes on the outer veranda of the main building. I woke up by 4:30 a.m. After 15 minutes, Sri Mahaswami came out of the cowshed where he had rested the night. He passed very near me, but I felt that I should not salute him. I went to the river for my morning wash, as is the habit in the countryside. It reminded me of my youth as a scout. While about to leave, I observed that Sri Mahaswami was coming to the stream. I stood waiting for him. He took his bath without haste, frequently looking at me. A devotee had brought tirtha from Kashi in sealed copper vessels. Sri Mahaswami respectfully splashed himself at the end of his bath with this water from the Ganges. It was possible for me to reach for some drops that had touched him. It was no more an ordinary liquid. One is entitled to inquire who has purified whom, the water Sri Mahaswami or conversely. I would rather think it was the second possibility. During the bath, a Brahmin chanted hymns of the Samaveda like in ancient times, and when he finished, he requested Sri Mahaswami to bless him to be cured of certain chest pains. On the return way to the village, Sri Mahaswami had caused a vacuum directly behind him, although several persons accompanied him. In this way, I was the only one to follow him very closely. I collected some sand on which he had placed. The grains seemed to be different. Shall I say that knowing that I was following him, he became heavier and blessed them? Anyway, for me, they were more valuable than the ashes given in some temples with the usual routine gestures. After the long preparation in the morning and during the bath, normally something would happen. Luckily, I did not presume anything. Otherwise, I would have done my utmost in order to collaborate with Sri Mahaswami, which is exactly what should not be done. Before entering the village, he suddenly turned towards a small temple of the goddess. He sat for Anushtana under a short and leafy tree. From the way I stood, I could see only 3/4 of his face from his right side and from above. Spiritually speaking, he seemed so powerful that he could have caught fire any instant, like a bundle of dry sheaves. From time to time, he was looking at me, but very quickly, as if to take care that I should not be burnt. The features of his face, usually mobile and expressive, had shrunk and were almost transparent. He had started with a few prayers and continued with the invocation gestures in the space. A corner of his dress covered his hands. When he uncovered them, a wave of power filled my heart. I tried to focus on his right eye, for I saw his face only from one side. It proved to be enough for a very powerful meditation. As usual, Sri Mahaswami was leading everything in the minutest details, just as a good doctor supervises the action of an effective treatment, the ear on the heart and the finger on the pulse of the patient. He placed different people between him and me now and then, signs that I needed pauses. I came out almost without headaches. Still, I had the feeling once or twice that I would become mad, and this at 6 meters from him. Regarding the action he carried out in the very depths of my heart, it must have surpassed repeatedly what I consciously observed. After these moments of ordeal, what a joy and feeling of security I felt to see him there just in front of me. At the pinnacle of my meditation, I had the following experience. To start with, I have arrived in thought very near to Sri Mahaswami. He touched with his hand the top of my head, blessed me, and sent me to the shrine of Kamakshi, the great goddess, in her temple at Kanchipuram. It is a place that I prefer among others. I reached there and I laid my head at the feet of the goddess. I implored her to save me. The goddess, the heart of compassion, entered in me in some way and filled me entirely. Then she concentrated herself so much in my eyes that the eyes became hers. In fact, only the eyes of the goddess existed. the feeling of I was so weak, the universe so negligible, as if they never existed. A certain weight reappeared then, and the I feeling strengthened, along with the need to come back again in front of Sri Mahaswami. Through an intense effort, I left my meditation and looked at him with my physical eyes. He slowly turned his face towards me, and I was able to contemplate his eyes, black and deep. Their pupils were even darker. His facial traits had become somber and menacing. But I was not afraid and implored him, being the destroyer, to annihilate all the shackles that bind me to the transitory. I felt that I had done the right thing. Sri Mahaswami projected then his own eyes into the interior of mine, millimeter by millimeter, filling my eyeballs with their brilliant presence. The experience repeated itself again after a slight diminishment of his guidance. Swamiji seemed satisfied. I tried to plunge in for the third time, but he stopped me by injecting between us some visitors and sent me the prohibition type headache, which I learned to recognize. I immediately submitted. It is prudent that one should be attentive to signs. I left in this state of acceptance. Without any apparent reason, my toes got infected, perhaps in order to stop me going up to Pichatur, where I had in haste deposited my belongings, the pharmacy kit included. Thus, I did not have any medicine or dressing with me. Yesterday in the evening, I operated on myself with an old shaving blade and applied a makeshift cream I had concocted, a mixture of ashes and sesame oil. If my old colleagues saw me now, they would say, "Our friend, who seemed quite a proper gentleman, now wanders barefoot across Indian villages, sleeps in cowsheds or in the open, eats whatever he gets, operates himself with a rusted blade. He has indeed become stark raving mad." And they would not be far off the reality. For those who are interested in the ultimate, that is God, though in a gentle way and never discarding a certain resolute critical sense and perspective, become ultimately madmen for God. Devotees, we shall continue to listen to Around the River Arani in the coming episode, bowing at the holy feet of the Gurus. Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara. Jaya Jaya Shankara.